the high-value pivot, turning professional rejection into your biggest financial asset. Introduction: the moment everything changed. Welcome. Take a breath. Settle in. Before we begin, I want you to bring to mind a moment of professional rejection. Perhaps it was a job application that went unanswered, a pitch that was turned down flat, a promotion given to someone else, a client who chose a competitor, a business that failed, a partnership that dissolved. Whatever your moment is, hold it gently. Do not push it away. We are not going to pretend it did not hurt. It did. Rejection hurts in a very specific and very real way, because it touches our deepest human needs, the need to be valued, seen, and found worthy. But here is what I want to offer you over the course of this audiobook. That moment of rejection, that sting you are remembering right now, may be the most financially valuable experience you have ever had, not despite the pain, because of what the pain is pointing toward. This is the high-value pivot. It is not a technique for pretending rejection does not matter. It is not toxic positivity dressed in business language. It is a deep, honest, and practical framework for understanding what rejection is really telling you about the market, about your positioning, about your skills, and about the extraordinary opportunities that closed doors are pointing you toward. By the end of our journey together, you will have a fundamentally different relationship with professional rejection, not one that eliminates the sting, but one that transforms the sting into signal, and signal into strategy, and strategy into financial momentum. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Redefining rejection. The word rejection comes from the Latin rejicer, to throw back. Something was offered, and it was returned. Most of us experience this as a judgment about our worth. When a job offer does not come, we hear, "You are not good enough." When a client says no, we hear, "Your work has no value." When a business fails, we hear, "You are not cut out for this." These interpretations feel so natural, so automatic, that we rarely question them. But here is the truth. Rejection is almost never about your inherent worth. Rejection is almost always about fit. Fit between what you are offering and what the receiver needs right now. Fit between your positioning and the market's current appetite. Fit between your timing and theirs. When a publisher rejects a manuscript, they are not saying the book is bad. They are saying it does not fit their current list, their current audience, their current commercial priorities. The same manuscript might be accepted enthusiastically by a different publisher, in a different season, pitched in a different way. When a company does not hire you, they are not saying you have no talent. They may be saying your presentation did not match what they imagined they needed, or that the internal candidate they were always going to choose made an external search feel necessary for political reasons, or that you were genuinely overqualified and they feared you would leave in 6 months. When a client declines your proposal, they may be saying your price is beyond their current budget, or your messaging did not connect with their specific pain point, or they had already decided on another vendor before they even opened your email. This reframe is not about excusing poor performance. It is about accurate diagnosis, because rejection is about fit rather than fundamental worth. The response is very different. Instead of shame and retreat, the appropriate response is curiosity and adjustment. The first step of the high-value pivot is to ask, with genuine openness, what is this rejection actually telling me? Write it down. Take the rejection, any rejection, and ask, what specifically was the mismatch? Was it my positioning, my timing, my packaging, my pricing, my communication, my audience selection? You will find that the answer almost always contains actionable information that once you have it becomes enormously valuable. Chapter 2. the feedback hidden in every no. There is a famous story about Thomas Edison, who, when asked about his many failed attempts to invent the light bulb, reportedly said something to the effect of, "I have not failed. I have found 10,000 ways that do not work." Whether or not he said it exactly that way, the principle is profound. Every attempt that does not produce a desired outcome is nonetheless producing information. And information, when we know how to read it, is one of the most valuable commodities in professional life. Let us talk specifically about how to extract the feedback hidden in professional rejection. The first type of feedback is explicit feedback, the feedback that is actually given. This is rare because most people and institutions are uncomfortable giving honest rejection feedback. They worry about legal liability, emotional confrontation, or simply being unkind. So explicit feedback, when you get it, is precious. Treat it like gold, even if it stings, even if it feels unfair. Sit with it, explore it, and ask whether there is a truth in it worth examining. The second type of feedback is implicit feedback, the feedback encoded in what was chosen instead of you. If you did not get the job, look carefully at who did. What does their background, their communication style, their specific experience tell you about what the organization actually values, as opposed to what they said they valued in the job description? This gap between stated criteria and actual choice is one of the most revealing pieces of market intelligence available. If your business lost a client to a competitor, study the competitor. What do they do differently? What story are they telling? What problem are they solving that you are not solving, or not solving clearly enough? The third type of feedback is pattern feedback, the feedback that only becomes visible when you look across multiple rejections. If you have been turned down for similar opportunities repeatedly, there is likely a common thread. It might be a gap in your credentials, a weakness in how you present your value, a market that is contracting in the specific niche you have been targeting. Patterns in rejection are your market's clearest signal that something in your approach needs to change. The practice here is simple, but requires discipline. Keep a rejection log. For every significant professional rejection, record the date, the context, the explicit reason given, and your own best analysis of the implicit reason. Over time, this log becomes a treasure map. The patterns that emerge will guide your pivots with a precision that no consultant or career coach could match, because they are based on your specific market's response to your specific offering. Chapter 3: The Neuroscience of Rejection and How to Use It. Before we can think clearly about what rejection is telling us, we need to understand what rejection does to us biologically, because the biological response to rejection is both significant and, once understood, manageable. Research in neuroscience has shown that social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex, which processes physical hurt, also lights up when we are socially excluded or rejected. This is not metaphorical. Your brain genuinely experiences professional rejection as a kind of pain. This pain response evolved for good reasons. In the ancestral environment, social rejection could mean exclusion from the group, which meant reduced access to resources, protection, and mates. Social rejection was literally life-threatening, so the brain learned to treat it as a serious threat and to respond with urgency. The problem is that in a professional context, this same urgent threat response is activated by a polite email saying they have decided to go in a different direction. Your nervous system does not distinguish between being expelled from the tribe and being turned down for a job offer. Both feel dangerous, both trigger a threat response, and a threat response is not the mental state in which you make good strategic decisions. In a threat state, Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of planning, creativity, and strategic thinking, goes partially offline. Your attention narrows. You become focused on escaping the pain rather than learning from the experience. This is why most people either catastrophize rejection, collapsing into self-doubt and inaction, or they defensively dismiss it, reassuring themselves that the rejectors were wrong without doing the genuine reflective work that would make future attempts more successful. The high-value pivot requires you to do neither. It requires you to feel the sting, acknowledge it with compassion, and then, once the acute emotional response has passed, engage your full analytical intelligence with the question of what this rejection is telling you. This is why the timing of the reflection matters. Do not try to extract the lessons from rejection in the first hours after receiving it. Give yourself permission to feel what you feel. Go for a walk. Talk to someone you trust. Sleep on it. Return to the question of what this is telling me after you have regulated your nervous system and restored access to your full cognitive capacity. When you do return to reflection, try this. Approach the rejection with the same curious detachment you would bring to analyzing a case study about someone else. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to add wisdom to your caring, to transform raw emotional energy into focused strategic insight. Chapter 4. Market Intelligence as a Financial Asset. Here is a concept that most career and business books do not teach explicitly, but that underlies the success of every great entrepreneur, executive, and professional who has ever navigated major setbacks. Rejection is a form of market research. Every no you receive tells you something about the market, about what it currently values, what it is willing to pay for, what problems it is urgently trying to solve, and what problems it does not yet know it has. This information has real financial value because it allows you to make better decisions about where to invest your time, skills, and resources. Most market research is expensive, slow, and abstract. You hire consultants, run surveys, analyze data from sources that may be outdated by the time they reach you. Professional rejection, on the other hand, is immediate, direct, and highly specific to your actual offering. It is the market speaking to you in real time about your real product. The challenge is that rejection data is emotionally charged in a way that survey data is not. When a survey respondent says they prefer a competitor's product, you can review that feedback with detached curiosity. When a client tells you directly that they are going with someone else, the emotional charge of the experience can make it difficult to access the intelligence it contains. This is the skill we are building, the ability to process rejection as market intelligence rather than personal verdict. Here is a practical framework for doing this. When you receive a significant professional rejection, wait until you have regulated your emotional response. Then ask yourself 4 questions. The first question: what did they choose instead? Understand the alternative. At 1, study it without judgment or resentment. What does it tell you about what the market currently prioritizes? The second question: what was my positioning? And was it clearly communicating the specific value this market cares about? Not the value you believe you offer in the abstract, but the specific outcome this specific market is urgently trying to achieve. The third question: was this the right market for what I offer? Sometimes rejection is telling you not that you need to change what you offer, but that you need to offer it to different people whose problems are a better fit for your solutions. The fourth question: what would I do differently in the next attempt, based on what I now know? This is the pivot question. This is where rejection transforms into strategy. Chapter 5. The pivot itself. Designing your next move. We have spoken about how to understand rejection, how to extract its hidden intelligence, and how to manage the emotional response so that intelligence is accessible. Now let us talk about the pivot itself, the strategic redesign of your professional offering. Based on what you have learned, the pivot is not the same as starting over. Starting over means discarding your previous experience and beginning again from nothing. The pivot means redirecting your accumulated skills, knowledge, and relationships in a new direction that is more aligned with where value actually exists in the market. This distinction is crucial because one of the most common mistakes people make after professional rejection is to treat it as a verdict on their entire professional identity, leading them to make sweeping, dramatic changes that throw away genuine strengths along with the approaches that were not working. The high-value pivot is surgical, not wholesale. It asks, what specifically was not working, and what specifically needs to change? And conversely, what was working, what is genuinely valuable, and how do I preserve and build on that, even as I change the direction? Let me give you a framework for designing your pivot. The first element is your transferable asset inventory. Before you think about what to do next, take a careful inventory of what you bring with you from your previous experience. Skills, both technical and interpersonal, knowledge, both specific and contextual, relationships and reputation, track record and demonstrated results. These do not disappear because one approach did not work. They travel with you and become the raw material of your next chapter. The second element is market opportunity mapping. Based on the market intelligence you have gathered from your rejection experience, where do you see genuine unmet needs that align with your transferable assets? Do not just look where you have been looking. Expand your view. Adjacent markets, emerging sectors, different scales of organization, different geographic regions, different delivery formats for essentially the same expertise. The third element is the minimum viable pivot. Rather than redesigning your entire professional life before testing whether the new direction has traction, identify the smallest possible version of your pivot that would generate real market feedback. This might be a single new type of client conversation, a new service offering tested with one client, a new industry you approach with your existing skills. Minimum viable pivots let you gather new market intelligence quickly, without requiring you to bet everything on an untested direction. The fourth element is the story you tell. How you narrate your pivot to yourself and to others matters enormously. The pivot story that works, that builds confidence in potential clients, employers, and collaborators, is not the one that hides the rejection or pretends it did not happen. It is the one that frames the evolution honestly, what you learned, why you are moving in this new direction, and what unique perspective your previous path has given you that makes you especially valuable in this new context. Chapter 6. High-Value Positioning. After rejection, one of the most financially significant aspects of the high-value pivot is what it does to your positioning, how you are perceived in the market, and what premium you are able to command. There is a counterintuitive truth about professional pivots driven by rejection. Done well, they often result in higher positioning, not lower. Here is why. When you go through a significant professional setback and come out the other side with self-awareness, new skills, refined judgment, and a clearer articulation of your unique value, you possess something that is genuinely rare and genuinely valuable. Resilience forged in real experience, not theoretical resilience, not resilience claimed without evidence, but demonstrated resilience, the kind that can be seen in your trajectory, in your story, in the way you talk about what you have learned. The market pays a premium for this. Think about the professionals and entrepreneurs you most respect and trust, the ones who command the highest rates, attract the best clients, and build the most loyal followings. Very few of them have had smooth, uninterrupted ascents. Most of them have stories of significant failure, rejection, and reinvention, and far from diminishing their authority, those stories are part of what makes them credible. They have been tested, they have been through something, they know things that cannot be learned any other way. Your pivot story, if you tell it well, can become a powerful element of your market positioning, not as a confessional of weakness, but as evidence of depth, adaptability, and hard-won wisdom. Here is how to craft high-value positioning after a pivot. Lead with your current offer and its specific value, what you do now, and what specific outcomes it produces for specific people. Do not bury your offer in a long backstory. Include your evolution as evidence. Briefly frame the professional journey that led you here, noting what you learned and why it makes you uniquely equipped to serve your current market. The pivot becomes part of your credibility, not a blemish on it. Focus on the client's world, not your own. The most powerful positioning keeps the spotlight on the client's problem and the outcome you deliver, with your experience as evidence of your ability to deliver it. The story is not about you. The story is about what becomes possible for your client because of what you bring. Price to your pivot. If your pivot has genuinely elevated your understanding, refined your approach, and clarified your value, your pricing should reflect that. Many people make the mistake of discounting aggressively after a setback, signaling to the market that they lack confidence. Instead, let your pricing reflect your honest assessment of the value you create, and let your pitch be strong enough to support that price. Chapter 7. The Financial Architecture of the Pivot. Let us talk specifically about money. Rejection has financial consequences. A lost client means lost revenue. A failed business means lost investment. A missed promotion means months or years of lower earnings. A delayed career transition means time spent in a role that is not building the financial future you want. These are real costs, and it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. The pivot does not erase those costs, but it does something arguably more valuable. It creates the conditions for recovery and growth that exceed what would have been possible without the setback. Here is the financial architecture of the high-value pivot. The first financial priority is stabilization. In the immediate aftermath of a significant professional setback, before you focus on rebuilding, ensure your financial foundation is stable. This means understanding exactly where you stand, what income you have, what expenses are essential, what runway you have before you need new income, and what low-risk options exist for bridging any income gap while you pursue your pivot. Do not make your pivot from a position of desperation. Financial desperation narrows your thinking, forces you into short-term decisions, and signals neediness to the market, which undermines your negotiating position. Stabilize first. Even if stabilization requires temporarily accepting work that is not your ideal pivot opportunity, the second financial priority is targeted investment in the pivot. Every meaningful professional pivot requires some investment of time, of money, or both. The question is whether that investment is focused and intentional or scattered and reactive. The high-value pivot framework asks you to identify the 2 or 3 investments that will have the highest leverage for your specific situation, and to make those investments deliberately rather than spending broadly on every promising sounding option. High-leverage investments might include a specific skill that closes the gap between your current offering and the market opportunity you have identified. Access to a community or network that gives you direct connections to your target market. A credential or portfolio piece that addresses the specific objection that has been showing up in your rejections. A coach or mentor who has successfully made a similar pivot and can compress your learning curve. The third financial priority is building a compounding asset base through your pivot. The ultimate goal of the high-value pivot is not just to recover financially from a setback, but to build professional assets that compound over time, skills that grow more valuable with use, a reputation that becomes more powerful with each success, a network that becomes more connected with each relationship you cultivate. This long-term financial thinking is what separates professionals who use rejection as a launchpad from those who simply recover from it. Recovery gets you back to where you were. The pivot gets you somewhere better. Chapter 8. Stories of the pivot in action. Throughout history and in contemporary professional life, the most compelling examples of financial success often feature a moment of significant rejection or failure as a turning point. Consider the entrepreneur who spends years building a company in one industry, only to have it fail, and then discovers that the skills she developed, particularly in operations and team building, are precisely what a booming new sector desperately needs. The rejection of her original venture is what forced her to look more broadly, to have conversations she would never have had while running a company, and ultimately to identify an opportunity she would otherwise have missed. Consider the executive who is passed over for a promotion he has been working toward for years. The sting of that rejection leads him to have a series of honest conversations with mentors and trusted colleagues that he had been avoiding while assuming the promotion would come. Those conversations reveal both genuine blind spots in his leadership and previously unacknowledged strengths that lead him to pursue a very different type of role, one that turns out to be far more financially rewarding and personally fulfilling than the one he had originally sought. Consider the consultant who loses her biggest client to a lower-cost competitor and is forced, for the first time, to clearly articulate why her work creates more value than a cheaper alternative. The discipline of crafting that articulation leads her to a clarity about her unique positioning that she had never had before, a clarity that ultimately allows her to raise her rates significantly with new clients who are a much better fit for her specific approach. In each of these stories, the rejection is not incidental to the financial outcome. It is essential to it. Without the rejection, the pivot would not have happened. And without the pivot, the superior outcome would not have been reached. Your story is not written yet, but it has these same elements available to it. The rejection that forces honest assessment, the reflection that reveals genuine insight, and the pivot that translates that insight into financial opportunity. Chapter 9. Building Rejection Resilience as a Long-Term Asset. We have been talking throughout this audiobook about how to respond to specific rejections, but I want to close by zooming out and talking about the meta skill that underlies all of this: rejection resilience. Rejection resilience is the capacity to receive professional setbacks without having your fundamental confidence in your own value and your forward trajectory significantly disrupted. It is not the absence of a pain response. That would be sociopathy, not resilience. It is the presence of a recovery mechanism, the ability to feel the sting, process the information, make the adjustment, and keep moving. Rejection resilience is a long-term financial asset in several ways. First, it allows you to take greater risks. The professionals and entrepreneurs who achieve the most significant financial outcomes are almost universally people who are willing to take significant risks, to pitch boldly, to enter new markets before certainty has been established, to price at the upper edge of their market, to pursue opportunities that have a real chance of rejection. People with low rejection resilience avoid these risks, not because they lack ambition, but because they cannot tolerate the possibility of hearing no. Rejection resilience is what makes bold action psychologically sustainable. Second, It creates a compounding advantage over time. Every time you process a rejection cleanly, feel it, learn from it, adjust, and move forward, you build a little more capacity for the next time. You develop what psychologists call an internal working model of resilience, a deep-seated confidence earned through experience that you can handle setbacks and emerge from them with your momentum intact. This confidence is itself a market asset. It comes through in how you pitch, how you negotiate, how you handle difficult conversations with clients and employers. Third, rejection resilience protects your most important professional relationships. People who do not have resilience often behave poorly when they are rejected. They withdraw in hurt silence, or lash out defensively, or burn bridges in anger. People with resilience can hear no with grace, can maintain relationships with people who have rejected them, and can even turn those relationships into future opportunities, because no today does not mean no forever. Markets change, circumstances change. The decision maker who passed on you this year may be your most enthusiastic advocate next year, if you handled the rejection with dignity. Conclusion: your rejection is not your destination. We have covered a great deal of ground together. We have explored the neuroscience of rejection and why it hurts the way it does. We have built a framework for extracting the market intelligence hidden in every professional no. We have talked about the architecture of the pivot, how to identify your transferable assets, map your opportunities, design your minimum viable test, and craft a story that positions your evolution as evidence of depth rather than a record of failure. We have talked about high-value positioning after a pivot, about the financial architecture of recovery and growth, and about rejection resilience as a long-term professional and financial asset. And throughout all of it, the central message has remained the same. Rejection is not a verdict. It is a signal, and the professionals who learn to read those signals clearly and to respond with strategic intelligence rather than defensive retreat are the ones who ultimately build careers and businesses of extraordinary financial and personal richness. Your rejection, the one you thought of at the beginning of this audiobook, is not your destination. It is a waypoint to turn in the road, a door that closed so that your attention might be directed toward a door that is opening. The high-value pivot is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing practice, a way of moving through professional life with both the openness to feel what you feel and the wisdom to transform experience into insight, and insight into action, and action into the financially abundant, purposeful career and life you are here to build. Take a breath. Feel the ground beneath you. You are still here, still moving, still capable of everything that matters. The pivot is yours to make. Thank you for listening.